Hello, everyone. It is me, Danielle Jane Mitchell, your up and coming queen of real estate, and I'm here for another episode of Tuesday Tip at 2. Hello, everyone. Hello, everybody. It is me, Danielle Jane Mitchell, queen of real estate, social media extraordinaire, and I'm here for today's and this week's Tuesday Tip at 2. And today we are doing a testimonial edition. Now, typically I have a testimony of a client and all that good things and pictures and all that other stuff. But this was a little bit different transaction. And really, so I'm just going to give a testimonial of how the closing almost did not come to be. But before I go into that, of course, I have to tell you that I'm a licensed PA realtor and I service the Philadelphia and surrounding suburbs. So if you are interested or anybody you know is interested in buying or selling in those areas, I am the one for you. All you need to do is go to book.djmrealtyco.com. Again, that is book.djmrealtyco.com to get set up with your seller, buyer, or investor consultation. And we can get you started. All right. It is spring. It has sprung. It's wonderful, beautiful weather, and the time is now. In this video, listen, you're going to learn about 3 things you want to avoid when you're selling your property, particularly an investment property. 3 things that you want to avoid, okay? One thing you don't want to avoid is not doing what you're supposed to do before closing. Second thing you want to avoid is not making sure that you don't owe a whole bunch of money, okay? And the third thing that you want to avoid is not being flexible when it comes to negotiating and things of that nature. Making sure that getting to the finish line within reason, of course, you still getting what you need and want within reason, is of the top priority, as opposed to just standing your ground in an unhealthy way. Unproductive way. That's a better way to say it. So let's get started. Number 1, I had the privilege of closing on an investment property that I had quite longer than I would have hoped. It was an investment property that had some work done. Was pretty much of the work was completed, like the plumbing, the electrical, a lot of sheetrock was put up already, and as you can see from the pictures, a lot of things were done, but it was also very cluttered. It's on a an interesting block in Southwest Philly. I'll just leave it at that. An interesting block. And we had gotten activity on the property, but people were, of course, coming in with quite low offers. And so I knew that going into putting this property on the market, that it could be a little challenging, right? Because why? I'm going to tell you. First off, investors going to come into the property and you would think, hey, this is going to be easy. No problem. I'll just come in, finish it off. It will be a quick turnaround. It'll be, very little money that I have to put into it to get it ready to sell or just to rent out, right? Mind you, this property is a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath row home that had built out a half bath in the downstairs. So yeah, it would be great for a rental. It would be great for a flip. But that's not what investors are going to think, right? Why? They're not going to think that because the thought process is, I don't know the workmanship, right, of the HVAC guy, the plumbing guy, the electrical guy, the sheetrock, the framing guy. I don't know any of it. I don't know. So therefore, being as though I don't know, I have to account for and budget for what if something is not done properly? What if I have to redo the electrical? Or what if I have to redo the plumbing? Or what if I have to redo the HVAC? All of the above. What if I need to demolish this whole thing because none of it was done right? And I need to be able to budget for the what if. I have to account for that in my budget, and running the numbers and when I go to submit an offer, right? So that is typically the reasoning that you will get from an investor who comes in and they're like, even though the work is done, one would think it works for you as a realtor, as the seller, but it does not. Okay. So oftentimes people want, or investors would prefer to pay less than even they would need to get it up to par. The flip side to that, or the second reason why this property was a bit of a struggle to sell, is that as a first-time home buyer, which will be one who was a bit more likely to buy this home, it's like, this is way too much work to take on as a first-time home buyer or a home buyer in general, right? So, most people, even if they do know a contractor, they don't have the patience or the work-life balance to be able to manage and navigate a project like that. Okay. So those are the things that we had working. So I knew coming into it that this might be a bit of a challenge. And to my preconceived notions about taking on this thing, this client and this seller. The other thing was my seller was pretty adamant on getting to a number that he wanted, right? Of course, I gave the comps, all those things I factored in and presented the fact that, hey, we're going to have to appeal this to investors. They are our audience. They are the ones who are going to want to or would be willing to tackle this property. Okay. But of course, the number has to look good. So, I let him know, I'm a realtor who likes to just lay down the facts, present the facts, right? And hopefully, when presenting the facts, you'll choose, wisely, with the counsel that I've given. But sometimes, people want to take a chance. So we priced it a little bit higher, not as high as, he wanted, but a little bit higher than I still think we should have priced it. But nonetheless, we did. And so we priced it, it's set on the market. And a lot of times when I go into a listing agreement with a seller, I will negotiate and be like, hey, okay, we'll list it on a higher end, right? But if we don't get any traffic, if we don't get any offers, then after a week or after 2 weeks, we're going to cut the price by 5,000 or 10,000, right? And that's how we'll go about that. We'll just cut the price, right? So being able to negotiate, do stuff that makes sense, that's what you want to do with a client or with a potential client. So we did wind up cutting the price. We had, an updated conversation, cut the price. Again, we're getting people to come in, but the offers aren't, to the standard that he would like, right? He wants to walk away with a certain number, preferably. So fast forward, now the house has been on the market, at this point, several months. And, finally we got a decent enough offer. When we kept having updated conversations, we had to talk about, well, what is your bottom line? Right? Because I need to do another price reduction. And so, we talked about what the bottom line is. I cut the price a little bit more, not at the bottom line, but maybe 5,000 more than the bottom line. I reduced the price. So we finally get an offer. That makes sense. It was pretty much a cash offer. It was an investor, and it was at the number that, my client felt comfortable with, and we were able to proceed forward and go under contract. So, we did go under contract. Everything's fine there. But when we're under contract, what happens is a title search ensues, right? So you typically only get a title search when you go under contract, unless you opt to get one done beforehand. So if you opt to get one done before you put your house on the market or when you put your house on the market, that's absolutely fine. You can do that. You can opt to get a title search done on your property before you put it on the market or when you put it on the market. But typically in a transaction, a title search is completed once you are under contract. Now, here's a tip. If you are one who has an investment property that's been sitting there, if you inherited a property, okay, it was given to you. If any of these scenarios, if you haven't received a bill, a tax bill, a water bill, if you have not been paying on utility bills, tax bills, you likely want to do a title commitment, a title search first. You likely want to do a title search first before you list the property or when you list the property to have a better idea of what liens may be on the property that will be taking out of your net proceeds that you will get from the sale of said property. Okay. And we'll talk about in a little bit why that's important. It's going to become important in a minute. So as I said, we're proceeding on. Everything's going fine. It was a cash deal, no inspections, again, an investor who's getting it done. So everything was going smoothly. Now, here comes the title search, and come to find out, my client, number one, he needs to get a water meter in the property. Now, nobody has been in the property. Like I said, for him, it was an investment property. Work was, half done. So they did not have need of water. So water had not been running. And so they did not have a water meter. So during while we're under contract, he gets the water meter installed, but that does not erase what was billed in regards to the water. Okay. Also, There was some unpaid taxes and things of that nature. All that to say is that, that was a bit of a shock to my client because, again, the title search wasn't done. So when I give a seller's net sheet, which is an estimate of what they can potentially get when we list it at a certain price, and of course, with each price reduction, I always gave an updated seller's net estimate cost sheet. I think that's what it's called, something like that. I always gave an updated one so he had an idea of what he would be able to walk away with. Now, of course, I didn't factor in any liens for on the property because I did not know of them, right? And apparently my client didn't, right? So therefore, that's something new. All that to say, it was no water meter. What the water department does in Philadelphia is that they do this estimated cost per month, and I guess they base it on the average. They overestimate really for the average usage for that home, or for, I don't know exactly what they base it off, but I would venture to say home size, right? So they base it off of that number times however they haven't had a water meter installed in the property. Okay, so that's been several months, a few years. Okay, so not only do they owe back money for the water, but the title company also has to hold money in escrow. Okay, in order to make sure that when they go to finalize all payments in regards to the property, that they are getting an accurate number, so that the new buyer, the buyer who now becomes the new owner of the property, does not owe for something, that they didn't, does not pay for something that they don't owe. Okay. So that usually takes about 3 billing cycles in order for the water department to get an accurate read and for the title company to make sure that is sorted out. Okay. That's a mouthful. So again, my client was not necessarily happy with that. And, you know, we had to push the closing date back first time around. So we wound up having to push the closing date back to see if we could rectify this because, again, no water has been used and all that good stuff. So we did that. The water meter was installed. A water meter reading was taken and received and recuperated, but the escrow amount stayed the same as far as, so when you hold money in escrow, my client is unable to get the net that they had hoped for and has to wait until those 3 billing cycles until they get that money back and get it out of escrow. Okay. So my client wasn't necessarily happy. Now we are leading up to the new closing date, and it was very touch and go. And so that's why I say another tip is to be open. Nobody planned for this, right? There is a measure of responsibility on the seller to be like, hey, if you didn't pay no bills, that you're going to have to owe at some point, right? But also, at what cost, right? When you're thinking of an investment property that's just sitting there that had gas, that had, electrical, that you're paying taxes on, whether you're paying on or not, they're accumulating. Whether you're paying the water or not, it's accumulating. So there is a deficit that starts to happen, right? And if you're in a position where, hey, having something is better than going into a deficit, going into a red on a continual basis for a property, right? And especially when it's something, hey, you got to pay your water. At the city of Philadelphia, it is like a tax lien. It's the same thing. You have to pay your water. That goes with the property. In Philadelphia, your taxes go with the property, your water goes with the property, and your gas goes with the property. Okay, so if those things are not resolved, they have to be resolved before the sale of said property, right? They're going to take their money when the home sells. Okay, so of course the other thing to do is hold on to it, but again, you're accumulating a deficit, paying on something that's just not making you any money, right? And again, it's not a primary residence, right? So all that to say, being flexible, understanding scenarios, understanding that things come up. That's unfortunate, but it's going to happen nonetheless. Being sure that you're able to be flexible, negotiate because things come up in situations is what's important. Being open, that is all. Now, fast forward to the day before closing, finding out that, hey, this money still has to be in escrow, finding out that, we still have to wait a couple more billing cycles to make sure that everything is rectified. My client needed some time to think things over, which they did, and we were able to move forward. He got some counsel from a family member, and who essentially said, hey, Just wash your hands clean. Things happen. Just move forward with the process. You've come this far, right? So we did move over, but come to find out, everything in the property was not cleaned out. So let's talk about post-closing addendums. Okay. Everything wasn't cleaned out. And so the buyer has the right to say, hey, either we are not going to go through with this deal, or 9 times out of 10, a buyer still wants to go through with the deal. The option on the buying side is to have this a post closing agreement or addendum, right? Which pretty much says, if you do X by X, we will return. If you don't do X by X, no. The addendum says, a post closing addendum is stating we are going to hold X amount of dollars in escrow after closing. When such and such is completed, those funds will be released to you. Okay. So the day of closing, my client was able to get most of their net minus that money that was held, that additional money that was held in escrow, to ensure that the property would be cleaned out. Right. So we closed on a Friday. They had to that Sunday night to make sure everything was cleaned out. I did ask for, now again, my seller was not happy about it. But I'm like, you didn't get it cleaned out. We knew that this day was coming. We knew that we was going to close at some point, and you didn't get it cleaned out. So, the buyer has to have some reassurances, right? In case you don't hold up your end of the bargain. We all know that it costs money for a clean out, right? So all that to say, fast forward to my seller was able to get it done. He sent me some pictures of it, and it looked beautiful. The buyer also, went to the property and confirmed that it was done and completed. And then he was able to get that money that was held for the clean out. He was able to get that released, and I was able to drop off that check to him. So making sure that you do your due diligence and whatever you're supposed to do. Now, there are some properties that are as is, but that was not the case for this property. My client agreed to have everything moved out of there that was supposed to be moved out of there. So all that to say is, post-closing addendums are things that work. Right now, I remember another client we went to the final walkthrough, and there was a leak going on, and we had to, get that figured out. And, I've definitely had situations where we had to come up with a plan, still go through it with closing, but it had to be a post-closing addendum in place to ensure that whatever has not been done that was supposed to be done before closing still gets done even post-closing, right? And there are stipulations surrounding that protects the buyer and the seller as well. Okay. Well, it doesn't really protect the seller, but protect the buyer. So we got 3 things going here. Making sure that we are open, that we are flexible. Making sure that if you need to do a title search on a property, that you do so. And also making sure that you hold up your end of the deal if you are the seller and you're supposed to get those things done, whether it's repairs, whether it's making sure things are moved out, whatever the case is, making sure that all your ducks are in a row. So that's my testimony or testimonial. That is my testimonial on today's and this week's Tuesday Tip of Tip. So that is all for today's and this week's Tuesday Tip of 2 testimonial edition. I hope you learned some tidbits. Day in the life of a realtor. Okay, it's just all is fair in home buying and home selling. I don't know, but if you're interested in buying or selling, you can go to book.djmrealtyco.com. Again, that is book.djmrealtyco.com, and we can get you started on your home buying and or home selling process. Okay. Remember, there's no place like home, no place like home buying. And I'm excited to talk to you guys next week. All right. Stay on the lookout for what's happening with these interest rates, because it's a lot going on. But I'm always here to keep you updated and informed. Okay. So send this to somebody who's interested, who needs to know about this stuff. All right. Talk to you soon.